right, good evening. I'd like to welcome everyone to Ashland Town Hall here in the Select Board Meeting Room. My name's Michael Herbert. I'm the Town Manager here, and with me is Assistant Town Manager Jen Ball. And tonight what we're going to do is we're actually going to review the warrant articles for next week's special town meeting that's going to be held November 20th, starting at 7 p.m. in Ashland High School. This year we have 15 warrant articles to discuss and vote on. Again, starts at 7 o'clock, and all the materials, including the warrant with the FinCom recommendations and the motions, is actually available on our website, ashlandmass.com. There's actually a section on the left that says Town Meeting. If you click on that, it'll take you to a number of different informational pieces about this town meeting, including the warrant and the warrant articles, and again, like I said, the FinCom recs and the motions. We do have a few people in the audience tonight, and I would encourage you to ask questions if you have any that come up, and I'll try to answer them to the best of my ability, as will Jen. But typically the way we do this is we'll just go through each one by one and discuss them and just provide a little bit of context. So without further ado, I'll start with Article 1, which is hear the report of the town manager. It's what we've been doing for the last couple of years at special town meeting is providing a report and an update on the progress we've made on different warrant articles that have been passed at previous town meetings. And I expect to do the same thing this year. Many of you have seen the progress that's happened in town on a number of different projects, and I'm looking forward to updating town meeting and the rest of the town on what some of those are and what we've got left to complete. Article 2 is adjustments to the FY20 budget. As we go through, I'll say some of these are typically standard articles that we do at each fall town meeting, each special town meeting in the fall, I should say, just in case Tara Ward, our clerk, is watching. She'll correct me. But this is, again, another one of those standard articles. What happens is we set our annual budget at the May town meeting, our annual town meeting. Unfortunately, what happens is that the state has not figured out their budget process until usually in the summer. And so the state budget process includes things like state aid, so money that comes to the town, and then also it includes charges that the state takes from the town as well. So once those are resolved at the state level in the summer, we can come back in the fall during town meeting and make adjustments to our appropriations based on that final state budget. This year, we're looking at an adjustment in the positive of about $200,000. According to our financial policies, we split that between the municipal departments and the school departments in a 30-70 configuration. This year, we will be adjusting the fire department budget by $56,000, almost $57,000. This is important because we recently were awarded a $750,000 SAFER grant through the Federal Emergency Management Agency, which allows us to hire 4 additional firefighters, which in turn gives us the ability to now have 5 firefighters per shift. That grant covers 75% of the costs of each firefighter for the first 2 years, and then 35% of the cost in the 3rd year. This funding here will help pay for that match and make sure that we're able to continue keeping those firefighters on the payroll well after the grant period ends. The school department will be increasing their budget $132,827, and they have a number of investments that they have planned on making based on their strategic plan, and these investments are in line with that. Any questions on Article 2 before I move on to Article 3? Okay, seeing none. Article 3 is a transfer of our free cash. This is another standard article that we do each year. At the end of every fiscal year, the town takes revenue in excess of the revenue that was budgeted and expenditures that were not expended but budgeted, sends those numbers to the state. The state certifies what's known as free cash, which is essentially the balance at the end of your checkbook at the end of the year. About 6 years ago, the town proactively decided to establish some financial policies that were agreed upon by the FinCom, the Select Board, and the School Committee on how to distribute that free cash money. And that money goes to capital and one-time projects. It also goes to the town's rainy day fund, or what we call our general stabilization fund. And then it also goes towards a trust fund known as OPEB, and that stands for Other Post-Employment Benefits. That essentially is retiree health insurance that until recently towns were not required to have on their books. They just have recently been made to show those liabilities on their balance sheet, and thus we have to plan for them. And so that our financial policies guide free cash towards those different accounts based on where we are in terms of the numbers in our general stabilization fund or rainy day fund. So this year we'll be adding $235,000 to our general stabilization fund, $768,000 towards our OPEB trust fund. There's $708,000 in capital expenditures that were deferred from the annual town meeting in May. For a list of those, I would encourage you to go to the town's FY20 budget document that's on the town's website that has the operating budget and the capital plan. You'll see the list of those capital items that are proposed to be funded under this article there. We're also including $144,000 for improvements to the Riverwalk project. That includes the completion of one more bridge that would cross the Sudbury from the north side over to the southern side, better connecting the Riverwalk Trail with the train tracks, and then also hopefully making some more improvements around Mill Pond Park. We have $50,000 in there for electronic signs, one downtown and then one at the high school. The Student Council has ambitiously raised a significant amount of funds to replace the Ashland High School sign at the entrance with an electronic sign. This will help them put them over their goal and allow us to replace that sign with a more modern electronic one. And again, we would be putting an electronic sign downtown as part of our downtown project, so this would help fund that. We also have $90,000 earmarked and appropriated for the survey and design of the Trolley Brook Trail. So Trolley Brook Trail is a section of the Upper Charles Trail, which is a larger trail system that Ashland has been planning for several years through the Upper Charles Trail Committee. And Trolley Brook is that section of the trail that is part of the Rail Transit District. So the large piece of land that we bought actually at last fall town meeting and is part of that plan. So this puts us in line to do the design and engineering of that trail, and then hopefully puts us in line for grant funds for construction in the future. And then finally, I have appropriated $500,000 towards the Capital Stabilization Fund. Those of you that are aware, we have two major capital projects that are occurring here in the future. One being the public safety building, joint public safety building that's going to be located on East Union Street. And then second is a new or renovated Mendez School, and discussions with the Mendez School Building Committee are still ongoing as to what that configuration is going to be. Again, whether it's going to be new, renovated, whether it's going to be 3 through 5 or 2 through 5, and then finally where that is actually going to be located. And so this $500,000 will help us better plan and make those investments when the time arrives. So all told, that totals almost $2.5 million, $2,496,000. Any questions from the audience regarding Article 3, free cash? Mr. DeSoni, welcome.
Welcome. Thank you. Good evening. Thank you for keeping the door open. I wanted to go back home and check things.
Good.
Okay. You've noticed that on the chart here that it's like 2/3 school. And I've been on this side saying the school has so many ways to get monies. It shouldn't have to go through a town meeting to ask for more that single economy families and parents can't afford anymore. When will this actually change over after this town meeting? When would that change over to help out the fixed incomers that cannot afford it? When will all that's come through so the school grows, family grows, and new
Yeah.
money grows for the
Okay.
schools, but the fixed incomers doesn't.
So, Mark, was that in reference to Article 3, or was that a very strategic segue into Article 4, which was the property tax exemption?
It's a good segue.
It's a segue half, but it's been a fixed income or elderly sort of battleground for many years.
Yes, you've been a staunch advocate for that, as I hope a few of us have been considered advocates for. But yes, that would go into Article 4.
Okay, and I'd like to, once you get through the articles, I'd like to reserve it. I'll do it now.
Okay?
Because I know that you want to get through it, and you got another, there's a planning board meeting right after this tonight.
Okay.
Is there any idea, chance, to Springtown meeting, to have any news for the town for the Eversource project?
Potentially. So, Mark, the question you're asking is, at the spring town meeting, the annual town meeting in May of 2020, will we be at a place to provide an update on the Eversource project? Is that
Yes.
what you're asking? Okay. I'm not sure. Obviously, if there's information that comes out prior to annual town meeting, we will share it with the community at that point. For those of you that are not aware, Eversource Gas is proposing replacing a gas transmission line that stretches from the Hopkinton line over to the Framingham line here in Ashland. They're scheduled to replace that with a new 12-inch pipe. The town has a number of concerns related to that, and it's I guess it's fair to say that it's in the middle of several legal hurdles in a number of different jurisdictions, both at the local and state level. So hopefully we'll have an update on one or more of those jurisdictions before that point, but I'm sure we would have a discussion about it at town meeting as well.
And for the fixed incomers and all that, what could maybe in town road, is my paper still alive and kicking?
Your paper is still alive and
Sure is.
kicking,
Thank you.
so it's a living document, Mark.
There you go.
Living, breathing.
Now, just to go back to what Mark said earlier, this actually segues into Article 4, which is a property tax exemption, and I'll turn it over to Jen to describe that.
So this article is also a standard article for the special town meeting that we discuss each fall, and it is a tax exemption for eligible seniors. So it's called 41C and a half. Each year, the Board of Assessors review our data and make a recommendation on the percentage in which we should bring to town meeting. This year, they're recommending a 9.5%, and that really equates to, so it's slightly lower than last year. Last year, I believe it was 10%, but it equates to a slightly higher exemption, and it's just based on a formula, which is basically our assessed values are a bit higher, and so it would equate to about $676 per eligible household. The eligibility requirements for that is really age and income driven, and so you have to be at least 65 years of older, and you have to have a combined income for a household of $58,000 or less, and own your home for 5 years or lived in the state for 10. And if you are eligible, those applications are due to the assessor's office, I believe, April 1st of each year.
Yes, April. They've recently revised the deadline for those of you that are interested. Used to be February 1st. They have extended it to April 1st now, which gives seniors a more of an opportunity to file. The other thing is that ours is a little bit different from other communities' exemption in that we don't look at assets. We strictly look at income as part of the determining factor as to whether or not to apply this aid or not. Any questions on Article 4? Okay. Moving on to Article 5. Article 5 and Article 6 actually are related, so I'm going to take them both together. So Article 5 is approving the purchase of land known as 0 Tri-Street. Article 6 is to approve a development restriction on the property at 378 Elliott Street. 0 Tri-Street is a 9.5 acre parcel. It's right off of 126, of course, off of Tri-Street. Again, about 9.5 acres. About 2 years ago, a local developer put in an application to build 5 or 6 single-family homes there. We had a number of concerns with that application from a conservation and a wetland restriction standpoint, and then also from a planning standpoint. We, in turn, have been in litigation with the applicant related to this property. And so we have come to the point now where it actually makes sense to have a purchase and sale with the owner put in place and bring this to town meeting for approval to actually purchase the property as opposed to continuing to litigate it. The reason we would want to buy this are several-fold, and I think those of you who have been around in town for a while know that we have ambitiously tried to preserve and protect property, not just through buying property, but also through other methods such as deed restrictions. Again, that kind of leads into Article 6, which I'll get to, but other methods. But it's not just about preserving open space and protecting it from development. It's also, especially in regards to Tri-Street, I think really, really important from an ecological standpoint. It serves as headwaters for really kind of the whole northern 126 corridor up into Framingham as well. So it provides a really important ecological and wildlife function as well. The total purchase price is $614,000, and again, Zero Tri-Street itself is 9.5 acres. To make the per acre cost a little bit more appealing, I think, to taxpayers, we approached an abutting landowner who owned 6 acres at 378 Elliott Street, and asked him to place a deed restriction on his property, which would not limit any development on that property, but would limit the development to only 1 unit per acre, buildable acre on the property. So, so that person at 378 Elliott Street or a subsequent owner couldn't do something like a 40B development where you would have a large, dense project like a 40 to 60 unit 40B or something of that nature. There, it's protected. It's protected from that. I also neglected to mention also with Zero Tri-Street, I had initially mentioned that the developer had looked at doing a 5 to 6 single-family home subdivision. That developer is actually now looking at doing something more along the lines of a 50-unit 40B project as well. So traffic, especially dumping out onto Tri-Street, which is a very small residential street going on to 126, obviously 50 units provides a pretty significant traffic concern, as well as the other impacts related to development on that smaller corridor. Any questions related to Articles 5 or 6?
Concern.
Okay, a concern has been raised.
Concern. I don't want to hog the mic all night, but if I don't have to. Okay, first concern that Tri-Street is a dead end. It has all the woods, wetlands back there on Tri-Street. That's one concern. The other concern is the person at 378 Elliott Street. Did he agree or wants to have the town meeting agree or not?
Well, we've agreed in principle on it, but it has to be voted on at town meeting as well.
And hopefully he'll show up and say his side, hopefully.
Well, I hope so too.
Yeah, it would be good to know. And the traffic, yes, especially when it's a dead end, so you gotta turn around, go back up Adams Road and get back out that way, go down Tri-Street, it's a one-way street.
Right.
And hopefully not the 50. Oh, the other thing that came up last week too, from this, there was people canvassing neighborhoods with signal sheets.
Mm-hmm.
Can you speak to that?
I cannot speak to any neighborhood activity that's
Well,
happened.
it's
Are you
like-
talking about advocating for this?
Yeah, there was like a sheet of paper to leave at the people's front door, it was at my house. And as I just looked at it, I gave it to my dad, who just said, he needs some entertainment value.
Yeah.
And said, you want to vote on this? He goes, yeah. And I saw, I said, why? Why did our house get this? So I'm just wondering if you knew anybody canvassing neighborhoods with a sheet of paper.
Certainly not in any official capacity, Mark, no.
Thank you.
But you do raise a good point, actually. It's something that, again, I neglected to mention. So I need to stress that Articles 5 and 6 are contingent upon each other. If one does not pass, the other will not be consummated as well. So Article 5 needs to pass for Article 6 to move forward, and then Article 6 needs to pass for Article 5 to move forward as well. So they are tied together that way, if that wasn't clear before. All right, thank you, Mark. Okay. Article 7, disposition of real property. Jen, I'll turn it over to you for this one.
Okay. So disposition of real property, really what that means, it's a sort of nasty way to say that we purchased land about 2 years ago, and we are hoping to get authorization to sell that property to a private citizen who wants to restore that house. So 2 years ago, when Northeastern sold the Warren Conference Center to Framingham State University, we purchased 2 pieces of property on Chestnut Street. This is 433, so it's the White House that is overlooks the fields down the street from the Red Barn. That has some historical significance to the town, and it had some direct relation to Henry Warren, where he had a workshop. And so we have worked with the Historical Society to create a historical preservation that will be a deed restriction. So when we sell it, we'll be ensured that it will maintain its historic significance. It will look the way it should look, and it will be brought back to its glory. Because right now it is sort of starting to really deteriorate, and the amount of work and maintenance that would be required is significant, and it's not something that the town staff can necessarily do. So we created an RFP, we put that out to bid. We do have an interested local person who is very passionate about this project, and that will be working towards restoring that back to its historical significance. So for this article, we need actually authorization to change the use. So when we purchased it, we created we bought it for general municipal use, and so that has to change. And then also, town meeting needs to give the Board of Selectmen authorization to move forward to sell. Does anyone have questions on that one?
All right. Article 8 is titled Authorize Easements Along Main Street. So this is in relation to the downtown project. Again, we're going to be making some significant improvements to the streetscape along Main Street and Front Street. We need easements for 5 properties along Main Street to complete that work. The first one would be 10 to 60 Main Street. That would be the old mill building. 100 Main Street, which is the old brick store that has recently been renovated, the Federated Church, 128 Main Street, and then also Santander, which is at the corner of Front Street and Main Street. 2 of those properties have already agreed to grant us that easement. This gives us permission to seek authorization from the other 3 as well. And so, again, that will give us the ability to realize the vision that we had put forward in terms of the downtown project. And actually, it's for wider sidewalks. It's a 2-foot easement for wider sidewalks. So, any questions related to that? Okay. All right, Article 9. We have 2 articles that are being presented by the Community Preservation Committee, seeking an appropriation of community preservation funds. This is the first of those, and it is to make some beautification and improvements to Mill Pond Park. Those of you that have driven by Mill Pond I'm sure you have seen the large bridge that has gone up as part of the Riverwalk project. The Riverwalk Bridge actually terminates at Mill Pond Park. We wanted to use this as an opportunity to make some improvements to Mill Pond Park. as well to really kind of finish off that project and also provide a nice entryway into downtown, a nice visual entryway. This really, it's not making a whole lot of changes to Mill Pond Park at all. It's improving the parking lot. It's creating a more formal transition from the Riverwalk Bridge itself to the sidewalks on Myrtle Street, creating more of a pedestrian-friendly path, adding some more vegetation, some more native vegetation, replacing a lot of the chain link fence, a lot of the older chain link fence that's in pretty rough shape along Mill Pond Park, and then also next to the Historical Society. Those of you that are familiar with the boardwalk and the overlook, it's actually replacing that with a composite. So after, if we are successful in seeking authorization or an appropriation here, we would need to go to the Conservation Commission to seek permission to actually do these improvements because it's on Conservation Commission property. We would also need to file a notice of intent for several of the improvements that are part of this. So there's still some permitting involved as well. So any questions related to Article number 9? Okay. I will move on to Article 10, which is the second CPC article, and that's a town forest restoration project. Earlier this year, we had a number of Boy Scouts, a number of Eagle Scouts work with the Town Forest Committee to restore and stabilize an old stone bungalow that's part of the town forest. I don't know if any of you are familiar with that, but it's a pretty cool piece of history. It's also pretty cool just scene in and of itself. It was in pretty rough shape. The Town Forest Committee and the Eagle Scouts did a great job of stabilizing it. They're seeking some funds to just do a little bit more work in restoring it, and we'll be able to provide a little bit more historical signage and about the historical context of that property as part of this project as well. So those of you that are familiar with the Town Forest Committee know that they've just done a lot of work recently in making the town forest a real gem as part of town, and so we'd certainly encourage people to vote to help continue that work with this. Seeing no questions, I'll move on to Article 11. Article 11 is actually a vote to decrease demand fees that are issued as part of late excise tax bills. Those of you that own cars here in Ashland or actually anywhere in Massachusetts know that you have to pay something called an annual excise tax for that car. What happens is if you do not pay that within the due date, you get a warning. Eventually, interest and penalties start collecting, including what's known as a demand fee. And that demand fee here in Ashland, as it is in probably 90% of the communities in Massachusetts, is $30. What we experienced this year, or a number of residents came forward and said that, well, they had never received the initial bill. And so they were seeing bills coming to them late that had this demand fee, that was on it, and again, sometimes the excise tax would only be $50 and the demand fee would be $30. So they had some concerns about that. One of the things that they would do is they would go and ask the treasurer if the treasurer would waive that demand fee. And unfortunately, we're not able to waive demand fees, and that's by state statute. We're not able to waive demand fees as long as the demand fees and interest and associated costs do not exceed $15. That's what the statute says. Of course, ours is $30. So what this article seeks to do is to reduce those demand fees from $30 to $15. Now, that would mean a reduction in revenue for the town of about $50,000, just making that reduction in half. But it is something that the board wanted to put forward to town meeting for a vote, and I'm sure we'll have a nice, robust discussion about this on town meeting. Any questions about that? Yes, Mark?
Yes. I'll say that if you can't run the car, you can't pay the car, you shouldn't have a car. That's only, it sounds like a people saying, I'm sorry, but the dog ate my homework sort of thing. This is saying, oh, we don't want to spend the money on it even though it's due. I'm not afraid of the extra $30, but now you bring it down to 15, which means they're not even gonna watch me anymore.
Oh, we'll watch it, Mark.
And I'll make it real quick, and simple and easy. Who sends out those excise bills?
So it emanates out of the treasurer collector's office. It actually goes to a mailing agency, what's known as our deputy collector. It's actually a firm that issues out those tax bills for Ashland as well as probably, I think, 70% of communities in Massachusetts.
So when the treasurer sends out the excise bills, and they know from their records that it's due on that certain date, by that mailing date, when it goes to that circulation company,
Mm-hmm.
that date will not change in the changes of hands. It's still gonna be that same date.
That's correct.
Good luck.
Okay. Thank you. No further questions on Article 11. I'll move to Article 12, which is it's an article that has been put forward by the Sustainability Committee, and it's to establish a net zero resolution. So I do see a member of the Sustainability Committee here, so I would certainly invite her up if she wanted to offer any commentary on this, if I missed something. Not putting you on the spot, though. So, I mean, everybody knows, I think most people know that climate change is really one of the more defining issues of our time. And so there's a lot more awareness of the impacts of climate change. There's a lot more awareness of what we do to promulgate climate change, and then also what we can do to prevent climate change as well. A net zero resolution or a net zero energy plan and goal seeks to really make the town carbon neutral by a certain date. And under this resolution, it would establish a goal of 2040 for Ashland to be net zero energy or carbon neutral. This doesn't say that we're going to, this is not a plan, this does not have specifics in it. It's a resolution that establishes that goal, establishes support for developing a plan to get to that goal, and then also a resolution to support that plan being moved forward to town meeting next year, before the end of the year, to be voted on. This is one of those things that it's, while we don't have a lot of specifics now, I think it's important to establish that target and start setting benchmarks and milestones for us to accomplish and meet. And so really that's what this seeks to do. And I think this has widespread support amongst, I think, many people in town government and across the town. So I look forward to the discussion about this as well. Any questions on the net zero resolution? Did I get it okay, Margie? Awesome, thank you. Articles 13 and 14 I will take together as well. These are formal articles that change the name of the Board of Selectmen to the Ashland Select Board. One is a general bylaw change, one is a zoning bylaw change. Earlier this year, I think it was the summer, the Board of Selectmen decided to change the name of the Board of Selectmen to the Ashland Select Board to make it more inclusive and much more gender neutral. This is something that is happening in a lot of communities across Massachusetts, and I think New England, where we still have a town meeting form of government with the select board or Board of Selectmen. And although the board decided to take a more informal vote over the summer and made that change informally, this seeks to make the changes formally in the documentation and everything that's legal, the legally required documentation to make this official. So, any questions related to that? Okay, and last but not least, we have Article 15, which is another zoning bylaw, and that amends industrial uses in the commercial highway, the commercial village, and the commercial neighborhood districts. In short, what this does is it prohibits storage facilities from being located in those commercial highway, village, and neighborhood districts, and restricts it solely to industrially zoned properties. I think this is pretty self-explanatory. Anybody that has driven down 135 and has seen the storage facility blossom next to the middle school. Obviously, there's nothing that we can do about that property right now, but this seeks to prevent something like that from happening in the future. So are there any questions related to that? Okay, Mark?
Yeah, other than Eversource, this is my second biggest project I've been working on. First of all, Mark Sony again, if you haven't got tired of me yet. I'm here all night, especially the next meeting that's after this, that has this on their agenda. Which brings up the question. Is this in the warrant, stamped and official, and it's on the planning board that's later on tonight, being an agenda item to talk about? What's the difference?
So it's on the warrant because it needs town meeting approval, but as part of that town meeting approval process, zoning articles have to have a public hearing with the planning board as well. So that's what you will be having tonight. Is it the opening of the public hearing, Jen, or is it actually continued?
I think tonight is this select board, so that's also a zoning bylaw,
Yeah.
so I believe that one already
So
happened.
So, yeah, it sounds like the one for the storage facility, the public hearing for that at a planning board meeting has already happened.
Yeah, because the planning board, the chairman Preston opened it up and put it out there in the last planning board meeting.
Oh, so they continued it.
Me and Mr. Hickey was here, and we're kind of going back and forth with the board itself, and I'm gonna echo what Mr. Hickey's saying about the construction land and all that stuff is, this may not be completely ready to go forth for the November 20th meeting. It should be tabled for the spring after this planning board meeting. If there's any more questions, and they hear from anybody else, that would it be completely officially ready if there's more questions after that? So I'm looking at it saying, it's half cooked, but it's not completely glazed yet.
Interesting, okay. Half cooked but not completely glazed.
Which means it's not ready to be fully consumed yet until it's get the full public speaking of.
I mean, I will have to say, if people disagree with these warrant articles, they have the opportunity to come. Again, it's a vote. People have the opportunity to go and advocate against passage of these articles just as much as they do to advocate for them, as long as it happens within a minute and a half. So, all right. Okay. We'll see in just opening it up. Are there any further questions or comments, just in general? Seeing none, I will want to again appreciate everybody for attending tonight and those of you watching at home. Hopefully it's been informative. Again, town meeting is going to be next Wednesday, November 20th, starting at 7 p.m. at Ashland High School. Again, this information, the warrant articles and the FinCom recommendations and the motions can be found on the Ashland website. We're a little less than a week away from town meeting, but if you have any questions or any comments, feel free to send them my way. It's helpful if I get them ahead of time because then I can answer them. I'll hopefully have an answer ready for you at town meeting if you have those as well. So thank you again for attending and or watching, and look forward to seeing you next Wednesday, and good night.